Good evening, everyone, or afternoon, depending on where you live. My name is Meg Olson, and I am the Grassroots Mobilization Director here at Network. I am thrilled to welcome you to our first climate justice webinar, Protecting Creation, Federal Rollbacks, Legislative Action, and Faith in Climate Justice. I am so grateful to Drake Starling, our Senior Government Relations Advocate for Energy and Environmental Policy, for all his work on tonight's program, as well as our communications team and everyone else who made this happen. I am also delighted to welcome our three special guests, Mia, Shamyra, and Ben. During our time together, we will hear from Network's Executive Director, Lori Carafone, followed by one of Network's Costin Fellows, Mia Lazo, who will share with us an original prayer that was inspired both by the late Jane Goodall and Pope Francis. Then Drake will provide an overview of administrative environmental rollbacks, and we will hear from one of our other guests, Shamyra Lavigne-Davey of Rise St. James in Louisiana. Then Drake will tell us about what is happening in Congress, focusing on two specific pieces of legislation. We will then hear from Ben Chu of Gonzaga University. Sister Emily Tukolsky will give you your call to action, and we will then have time for Q&A. Throughout the webinar, please feel free to type your questions into the Q&A box so that we can answer them during the 10 minutes we'll have at the end of the webinar. And here are our presenters for the evening: Lori Carafone, Mia Isabel Lazo, Drake Palmer Starling, Ben Chu, Shamyra Lavigne-Davey, and Sister Emily Tukolsky. And it is now my pleasure to pass it off to Lori. Thank you, Lori.
Thanks so much, Meg, and good afternoon and good evening, all, and welcome. I'm so grateful that you've joined us. I wanted to start off tonight with prayers for the people of Jamaica who are dealing with devastation from Melissa, a Category 5 storm that has hit the island. The growing impact of monster storms like this makes our work and our issue tonight all the more critical. Our focus tonight is on care for creation. And we remember that care for creation, like all of Network's policy issues, is rooted in the Catholic social justice tradition. We safeguard God's gifts for all people and strive to be in right relationship. We act in solidarity when we come together, operate from a preferential option for poor people, and we protect those most affected by climate injustice. We must learn and listen from the most impacted communities as we pursue climate solutions. Our speakers tonight bring expertise, lived experience, activism, and passionate leadership. They remind us that protecting creation is an act of hope, and that our faith calls on all of us not to despair, but to act. Living our faith means ensuring clean air, safe water, and healthy lands for all people. Network's policy agenda is called An Economy for All. And this includes a clean energy economy that protects all people and creation and brings our energy costs down. No matter where we live, the city, the suburbs, or a rural area, we all deserve these things. It's a response of faith to protect our neighbors, our lands, and our future. We hold these joint goals as sacred as we gather in this space to learn, to grow, to act together. And now I will pass it off to Network's sister Carol Costin OP Fellow, Mia Lazo, to lead us in a prayer she wrote. Mia is a sophomore at Mount St. Mary University in Los Angeles, where she is majoring in environmental studies. Thanks, Mia.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank you for joining us tonight, and I would like to also thank you all for joining me in prayer. Creator of all life, you who dwell in every leaf, every river, every living soul, we come before you with humble hearts, aware of the harm we have done to your creation. The cries of the earth echo through the forests we have cut down, the oceans we have filled with waste, and the skies we have darkened with our greed. Forgive us, O God, for using the earth's gifts faster than they can be renewed, for seeing the world as a resource to be consumed rather than a home to be cherished. Open our eyes to the suffering of creatures, from the blue whales in our oceans to our rodent friends living at our highest peaks, to the pain of those forced from their homes by war, poverty, and the changing climate. We gather to ask for forgiveness and challenge the institutions that allow for waste to be dumped into our waterways and industrial expansion. Pour out upon us the power of your love, that we may protect life and beauty wherever they are found. Teach us that our smallest daily choices, what we eat, what we wear, how we live, carry the power to heal. May we choose always to nurture, not to destroy. God of mercy and justice, strengthen us and continue to strengthen those who work to restore the balance of creation. Touch the hearts of those who seek profit over people. Comfort those who bear the greatest burdens, and unite us in the shared calling to care for our common home. May we walk gently upon this earth, in awe and gratitude for its wonder, connected to the beauty of all living things, not blinded by gilded lilies, in solidarity with the poor and those whose voices are suppressed. And in hope for generations yet to come, we ask this in the name of love itself and the love that sustains all things. Amen. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you so much, Mia, for your beautiful prayer. And now I'd like to invite Drake to talk to us about what's happening with the administration. Thank you, Drake.
Yeah, thank you, Meg. Thank you, Mia. And thank you, Lori, so much for opening me up here. This is a wonderful introduction. I'm super happy to talk about everything that's going to be happening within the next couple of months, weeks, and possibly years in Congress and in the Trump administration. So, without further ado, I'm going to start talking about the Department of Energy. There are lots of cuts to renewables, there's some fossil fuel expansion. There's a lot of negative, there's some positive, and I want to make sure that we're all very aware of it. So, on October 2nd of this year, the Department of Energy announced it was terminating over 300 financial awards across 200 projects. That's almost $8 billion in funding. This affected offices including the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, Grid Deployment Office, Office of even Fossil Fuel Energy. Many of these canceled awards were in states that voted for the Democratic ticket in the last election in California, Colorado, New York, New Mexico, and a lot of these projects included funds for hydrogen hubs or grid resilience or even grid connection. They even included low income utility programs and transmission upgrades. The Department of Energy right now is saying that their rationale is the terminated projects didn't really adequately advance the nation's energy needs and they weren't economically viable. That is, well, questionable to say the least. And they continue arguing that these projects would not provide a positive return on investment of taxpayer dollars. Yet we are going to see, and most Americans are going to see, an uptick in their utility bills as a result of the cancellation of these clean energy projects. In addition, there's a lot of separate reporting that shows that there's a dramatic reduction in direct solar and wind funding And there's a huge refocus of the budget towards fossil fuel infrastructure, which is actually going to make things more expensive. The reason that this matters is not just because we as network and we as people of faith want to see a huge policy shift towards the clean energy transition. It's that this is clearly not the administration's priority. The Department of Energy is reviewing, canceling, and redesigning how grants are awarded, and the requirement of viability and alignment is within the American energy dominance. That is now being emphasized over actual viability. It seems to be that loyalty to certain American energy projects is being prioritized over actual cost benefit analysis. So that is something that we need to take into consideration when we're talking about whether or not fossil fuels are the future, solar is the future, wind is the future, nuclear or hydrogen or hydropower, or even other forms of renewable, even biofuels are the power. So that's a little bit about the Department of Energy. The Department of Interior. Um, in the past year, the Department of Interior has issued many memos that direct the termination of subsidies for wind and solar on federal lands. Just to remind and situate every one of our listeners here, the Department of Interior has domain over federal lands, not over whether or not a project can go forward on private land elsewhere. It's almost exclusively on federal land or on any project that has to do with a federal subsidy or a federal component of the project. So by and large, it has to do with federal lands. So they issued a memo in July of this year saying, no more solar, no more wind on federal lands. We're going to review those projects. Because according to this administration, they're not viable, which is in stark contrast to, I guess, what all industry experts say is the reality. The Department of Interior has proposed rescinding the public lands rule. And I know that I use quotations sparingly, but the public lands rule is something that has increased state and tribal stakeholder involvement, which shifts authority from just the federal government to federal, state, and local levels as well, so that tribal governments are also involved. These are people that we have trampled over for centuries as a nation that we need to begin not just involving now when it comes to the clean energy transition, but these are individuals and tribes that we need to include in the clean energy transition as of yesterday. So in April of this year, in conjunction with a lot of executive orders of the Department of Interior, they began fast tracking fossil fuel and mining permitting procedures. And they cited a declared energy emergency by the Trump administration. There was no energy emergency, according to most experts. However, that designation is almost solely left up to the executive branch, and that's what happened. There are a lot of broader signals of dismantling or de-emphasizing environmental justice language and priorities, and prior land use or habitat protections that are no longer on the table. And I want to make sure that you understand this. The Trump administration is not prioritizing the cost of living, nor is it prioritizing the implications of of how this impacts your clean air or your clean water or your environment. So I want to make sure that we all understand that. I'm going to quickly pivot to the agency that we all know the best, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. So under Trump 2.0, under this Trump administration, the EPA has rolled back several landmark clean water protections. They have weakened safeguards that have been in place for decades. One of the most significant changes came through the 2020 Navigable Waters Protection Rule. It drastically narrowed the scope of the Clean Water Act. This rollback removed federal protections for millions of miles of streams and nearly half the nation's wetlands, which are critical sources of drinking water for not just 1 in 10, not just 1 in 5, but 1/3 of Americans. By redefining which waterways qualify as waters of the United States, the Trump administration's EPA rule is allowing industrial and agricultural pollution to flow completely unchecked into small streams, seasonal wetlands, reservoirs, endangered ecosystems, and frontline communities. This essentially means that they're not going to protect human health and the environment. They're going to prioritize corporate interests over clean water and public safety. Meg, could you please go to the next slide? Thank you so much. I want to introduce to each and every one of you someone who understands exactly what it means when the government does not prioritize sacred life, clean water, clean air, and human safety. There we go. Yeah, one back. There we go. Perfect, perfect, perfect. I would like to introduce to each and every one of you a personal hero of mine, Shamyra Lavigne, who is a co-founder and executive assistant of Rise St. James in Louisiana. Shamyra, come on, jump on board. Go ahead. Let's hear your voice. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Drake. I appreciate it. And thank you, Network, for
No,
having
I
me.
appreciate you. This is great. I'm so happy that you're here. This is wonderful. I can't tell you how many people have told me we're excited to hear from you. So take it away.
Absolutely, guys. Drake said, I'm Shamyra Lavigne-Davey. I'm the executive assistant at Rise St. James, and I'm just going to grab your attention for a few minutes to give you a very short, condensed version of what we're fighting here in Louisiana. And thank you to Emily, who will be running my slides for me. And so I just want to let you know what Rise St. James is. It's a grassroots faith-based nonprofit organization that is fighting for the eradication of industries in the river parishes, specifically in St. James Parish, and from the expansions of those facilities. Next slide, please. So let me give you a little bit of history. If you have heard of Cancer Alley or not, let me tell you what it is. Cancer Alley is an 85-mile stretch of road that runs along the Mississippi River in Louisiana, and it spans from Baton Rouge, Louisiana to New Orleans, Louisiana. And in that 85-mile stretch of road, there are over 200 petrochemical facilities. These facilities even create different products that we may use or may not use. The products may be exported overseas, but those petrochemical facilities produce pollution, and it pollutes into our air, it pollutes into our water, and it pollutes our soil. We are dealing with an overgrowth of people with cancer. So I have 2 aunts who've died of cancer. I have 2 uncles with prostate cancer. I have a multitude of cousins who've died of cancer. And we have RISE members that have died of cancer. And it continues and continues. But specifically in St. James Parish, we have parishes in Louisiana, of course, and not counties. But in St. James Parish, there are 7 districts. And in those 7 districts, all the industries are only in the 4th and the 5th district. And it just so happens, even though St. James Parish is split about 50% Caucasian, about 50% African American, the 4th and the 5th district are predominantly African American, and that's where all of the plants are in our community. I am from the 5th district. That's where my mom's house is right now. To this day, it's where I grew up. And in the 5th district, we have 12 industries in a 10-mile radius. Next slide. Having this overgrowth of plants, what we call industries plants for shorts, has led to us having these to be disproportionately impacted by cancers, and the children have asthma, rashes, and so on and so forth. Women have premature births. They may have miscarriages. It's very common in our area. And the children and the women are the most vulnerable because a child's body his immune system is not developed enough to be able to combat this type of chemicals. We are at a higher risk than any other place in the nation for cancer. And particularly in this picture here, I have to lightly touch on a little bit of history of our community, just to go back a little bit further. St. James has a history of having plantations. Some of those plantations turned into penitentiaries, like Angola Plantation became Angola Penitentiary, and some of those plantations became chemical plants. Here in these two pictures, this is a picture of two facilities. Both of them is just different angles of it. This is the site of the first industry that came into our community. As if you haven't been to St. James is a very small rural town, a lot of sugarcane. It's not a lot of red lights. We don't have any grocery stores. We have to go to the next community for that. So if you live here, it's because you're a descendant of your grandparents who lived there. People don't typically move into this area. And so my ancestors were already living in this community whenever the first industry came, which was in the 60s, the 1960s, and the name of the industry was golf. That industry built at the site that you'll see in this picture here. This industry that you're seeing is actually two. It's Mosaic Fertilizer, and then right next to it is American Styrenics. Those industries emit benzene into the air, formaldehyde, ethylene oxide, and a whole list of chemicals that impact our body and have led us to being sick. So the first industries came in the 60s, and by the 80s, the term Cancer Alley was coined for our community. Next slide. But then there was my mom. This is my mom, Shamyra Lavigne. She is a former school teacher who was living about 2 miles from that last image that I just showed you. That's the 5th district. And she heard about a new industry named Formosa Plastics, which is a $9.4 billion Taiwanese industry that wanted to be built right next to those two facilities you just saw in the last picture. She heard about it on the news because the governor was excitedly telling about it. And she said, not on my watch. And she decided to stand up and fight back. She did that in 2018. She didn't know what to do. She was teaching at St. James High School at the time. And she prayed about it. She went to God. She said, God, what do you want me to do? They're killing us here. We can't handle any more pollution. God told her to fight. She didn't know what to do, but God led her, and God put a fight in me, which is one of my favorite quotes that she says. And that's her standing in front of American Styrenics in this picture. Next slide. So then Rise was started, and we've been fighting on, and we have had a lot of victories. We've overcome a couple of industries that have tried to be built in our community, but then we have also had some setbacks. And so due to the time I have, I'm going to get into a little bit of our setbacks, of our victories and our setbacks that we've had from the Trump administration, and then I'll close out. So with the Biden administration, we saw things that never happened before. We had EPA pay attention and come to see us. And we even had the Biden administration in February 2023 file a lawsuit against an industry that's in Reserve, Louisiana, named Dinka, formerly known as DuPont. This industry was emitting chloroprene into the air right on the fence line of an elementary school with 500 plus little African-American kids there. And the EPA recognized that there is no safe level of exposure to chloroprene. Nobody can be exposed to chloroprene at a safe level, let alone children in the elementary school. The Biden administration filed a lawsuit against that industry. And in March 2025, when he who shall not be named was elected, his administration dropped the lawsuit. Next slide. In November of 2021, former EPA Administrator Michael Regan, he came down, if you see him in this picture, he came to St. James and he did a tour. He toured our community. He met with community members, as you see in this picture, and Dr. Beverly Wright is in the back and the left in the back left in the black. And that's my mom to the right, and I'm somewhere in the back. And he told me personally that this tour changed him. He not only came to Louisiana, he went to Texas and Mississippi. And next slide. As a result of him going on this tour, he decided to release something called the Han Rules. The Han Rules reduced the community-wide risk from air toxic emitted from large facilities by 96%. It was the best thing that could have ever happened. We finally felt heard by the EPA. We felt seen. And this was a monumental step, and a step that EPA has never taken in the history of the EPA. Next slide. And then, of course, he who shall not be named, in July 2025, actually on my birthday, July 17th, 2025, worst birthday gift ever, he decided that he was going to grant exemptions to those facilities so they would not have to abide by the HANS rules. And so it was another setback that we received underneath this administration, and it's been a very much so an uphill battle. But we're continuing to fight and doing everything that we can do. And thanks to our partners at Earth Justice, and along with RISE and a couple of other community groups, we filed a lawsuit this week. Earth Justice filed a lawsuit against the administration about these exemptions to the HANS rules that he has allowed. He has been an advocate for the polluters. And I know if we were billionaires here in Louisiana, he would care about us. If we could pay him to do the right thing, he would do it. But since we are poor and we don't have billions of dollars for him, he doesn't care. And then final slide, please. So I posted some things here, our website. Some of the people who have come down to help us, Jane Fonda, John Legend, and Vice President Al Gore, they have all heard us and stood with us, and I'm asking that you stand with us as well. You can find more information at risestjames.org. My email is shamyra@risestjames.org. I know I'm limited on time, but here's a little taste of what we're doing here. And I also want to say we're all in this together. God has us. The time is now. And the most important thing we could do right now is be in community and support each other, because we are not alone and we're in this together. Thank you so much.
I just realized I was on mute. I was going to say, Shamyra, I took my glasses off in like a dramatic moment. Uh, that was great. That was fantastic. You gave us such a succinct description of you, your mother, your activism, her activism. That's what we not only want to hear, we want to see that. That is so much part of the work that we not just do here at Network Lobby for Catholic Social Justice. It is part of the people that we invite to join us in our coalition, which are people of good faith. And you clearly seem to be one of those individuals. So we are so happy to have you. Thank you so much for giving that presentation. That is absolutely great. Can't wait to talk to you more later on about this. I'm going to be emailing you. You look out. Meg, excuse me if I might be a little bit off the timeline. I think we're going to be moving into the legislation. Is that correct? Yes, I think so. So thank you once again, Shamyra. We're going to be talking right now about two in particular forms of legislation. I want to put this into context for everybody. The Republican Congress right now, they have been for not just since Donald Trump was elected with the trifecta in Congress. They have been for decades looking for a way to circumvent NEPA, which is the National Environmental Policy Act. They have been looking for a way to circumvent the ESA, which is the Endangered Species Act. They have been looking for a way to circumvent a host of other environmental issues and laws. And the way that they couch this is, we just want to get rid of red tape. There is some red tape. The red tape that they want to get rid of is not red tape. It is sort of, I would like to categorize it as gauze on an open wound. That's not red tape. You need that tape to prevent serious bleeding from the patient. That is what a lot of these environmental laws are designed to do. So I'm going to talk about one in particular right now. There's the Permit Act, which I believe is called H.R. 3898. We at Network Lobby oppose this bill because it weakens NEPA and it silences lots of communities. It does so much harm because it overrides exactly. A lot of individuals who support it think that it's a rollback, but it's not really or rather that it's a reform and not a rollback. It absolutely is a rollback. It caps timelines, it limits reviews, and it reduces scientific and community input. It silences communities, it cuts public comment, and restricts judicial review. That means that judges cannot properly review this type of action. It undermines local and tribal voices. And worst of all, it expands fossil fuels. We don't want anything that fast tracks oil, gas, and mining projects while they do very little for clean energy, and that's what the Permit Act does. It erodes accountability because it makes it harder for citizens to challenge harmful projects in court. It hurts frontline communities, which are often Black and Brown and Indigenous communities, because it increases pollution risks for Indigenous, low-income, and rural areas. And we just heard it from Shamyra. That woman and her mother and everyone in her community, they haven't heard it. They have lived this experience their entire lives. They know what it is to be a frontline community. When people, I feel sometimes in DC, talk about what a frontline community is, what is that? It's Shamyra. It's her mother, Sharon. It's everyone in their community, in their parish. Those are the individuals that this type of legislation hurts. That's not one or two people. That is hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, and ultimately millions of individuals if we allow this type of legislation to pass and go unchecked. We do not want that. And Network Lobby certainly does not support that. And at its core, it really misses the real problem because the bottlenecks are in the transmission and planning, not in the environmental review. So the bottom line is this: it's a corporate giveaway that prioritizes polluters over people and weakens our democratic environmental review process. This is something that we do not want. So that is the Permit Act. This is something we are asking our community members to oppose. Now, I'm going to briefly talk to each and every one of you about something called the Fix Our Forests Act, also known as HR 471, or, excuse me, I just want to quickly take a look at that. Yeah, thank you so much. Meg is she is the moment right here, everyone. She's tracking me before I'm even tracking myself. She's making sure that I'm making sure that I'm keeping up to speed with the PowerPoint. All right, so the Fix Our Forests Act is something that we at Network do support. It is bipartisan, it is comprehensive, and it is common sense. Now, those three words, they don't make a lot of sense to a lot of people because they sound ugly. Why would you want to support something with Republicans? Why would you want to support something that uh, that they call common sense when our common sense might not be theirs? And I can give you a really good explanation. The Fix Our Forests Act is an important piece of legislation in the toolbox for forest and wildfire resilience. It has very big implications for clean water, forest health, climate adaptation, and rural economies, in particular in the western states. Those states have faced a lot of wildfires in the past several years. The real challenge is how it is deployed. You got regulations, oversight, budgeting, on ground execution. Those things determine whether or not the promises delivered become promises kept or not. Now, it's a bipartisan bill aimed at improving forest health and reducing wildfire risk that expands collaboration among federal, state, and tribal agencies. I want to emphasize the latter. That is quite new. Tribal agencies being included in a federal bill is something that is very, very new in federal legislation. There are increased prescribed burns, say that 10 times fast, accelerated forest restoration projects, and a lot of the supporters, which include the Nature Conservancy, the Environmental Defense Fund, the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Institute, among many others, including tribal institutions. They argue that it modernizes management tools and promotes ecosystem resilience. The bill's success hinges on how it is implemented, whether it restores forests and protects watersheds, or it becomes a vehicle for exploitation. We do not expect that because we believe that we can actually get the Democratic votes to increase this type of funding for this bill. So, because healthy forests are essential for clean water, erosion control, flood protection, we as advocates emphasize that true forest resilience must include safeguards for watersheds and communities that rely on them. Period. There is no question about that. So, Meg, if you could, oh, actually, no, keep it right there. I just want to, everyone, you can take a brief look at this. Um, at the bottom, you will see that this had bipartisan support. Um, it passed in the House January 23rd of this year with 279 Democratic votes, votes in the House of Representatives. 64 Democrats voted in favor. That is 9 more Democrats than voted in favor last year. That is a huge win, and we want that to continue. Right now, we are asking you to support this bill, in particular in the Senate, because that is where it currently lies. We all know there is a government shutdown, and we can talk about that at a later point. But right now, we're asking you to support the Senate version of this bill. Meg, next slide, please. I also wanted to give you a quick brief on who supports this bill. You can take a look at this. You can Google all of their organizations. The biggest ones that come to mind are Citizens Climate Lobby, Nature Conservancy, Environmental Defense Fund, National Wildlife Federation, and the National Audubon Society, and the Federation of American Scientists, which I'm a little biased towards because I did consult with them previously. But I think that this is a bill that actually does provide a lot of resources for the things that we as Americans are sort of concerned about when it comes to wildfire management. So I'm very hopeful that this bill does see the light of day. Next slide, Meg, please. Thank you. And without further ado, I thought maybe we could have, I don't know, a guest panelist who has actually have some sort of lived experience when it comes to, oh, Ben, you're gonna hate me for this. I'm gonna get this so wrong. We just talked about this. You're already hearing me. It's
It's a
not
tongue twister.
wildfire man, it's wild. Uh, you're not a wildfire firefighter. That's not it. You
That's,
are
yep,
a
wild land.
wildland
Yes,
firefighter. All right, okay.
you
You go
got it.
ahead. You go ahead. Take it away,
Awesome.
Ben. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for having me. A little
Yes, we're
about me.
very glad to have you. Thank you so much. Sorry, I didn't give Ben a proper introduction. He is an integral ecologist who does Laudato Si pilgrimages at the University of Gonzaga in Washington State. He is a wild, not a wildfire firefighter, but a wildland firefighter.
Correct.
Ben, take it away. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Drake. A little about me. I'm a former federal wildland fire captain, and there was something that happened in 2020 that rocked my world. Not talking just about COVID, but also the birth of my first child. And I couldn't help but ask in my heart when I was holding him, what kind of world am I leaving him, as well as all the babies and the future generations of humanity to come. So I sat with that question uh, for a few years when my position at Gonzaga University was created. It's uh, it's as a specialist in ecological spirituality. So yeah, like Drake mentioned, I do integral ecology work, Laudato Si work, wilderness retreats, integral ecology workshops, pilgrimages, prayer hikes. It's a pretty sweet job. I still respond to fires during the summer, but now I get to work proactively and care for our common home with the future generations, with our college students. There's two insights I'd like to share with you today. The first is about the dualistic mindset that's at the origin of wildland fire suppression. And it actually started right here in Eastern Washington, almost over 100 years ago, with the Great Fires of 1910. So in 1910, in Eastern Washington, Northern Idaho, and Western Montana, 3 million acres were burned, 87 lives were lost, and many towns were completely destroyed. As a reflection of the zeitgeist and level of consciousness at the time, the response was pretty simplistic. It was a dualism. Fire bad. People good. Towns good. Fire bad. Put
Yeah.
fire out. In fact, at the time, the third chief of the Forest Service, William Greeley, he was the son of a Congregationalist minister, and he said, quote, Satan was at work in these fires. So
Oh,
there
wow.
was a lot of yeah, spiritual almost. It became like a spiritual battle. As a result of the Great Fires of 1910, the U.S. Forest Service's national relevance was cemented, and new fire suppression policies were inscribed. And the first wildland fire suppression workforce was created. These policies implemented what we realize now was an over-aggressive suppression of all natural fires, and they also banned the indigenous use of cultural fires, both of which were an integral part of these fire-adapted and pyrophilic landscapes that have been shaped by wildfire for tens of thousands of years.
Hmm.
In the past 100 years, what this over-aggressive suppression has led to is an accumulation of fuels, that's brush, underbrush, canopy, which otherwise would have been cleared out with low to moderate intensity lightning fires and cultural burns. And this compounded with climate change and increasing populations has led to, newsflash, no surprise, unprecedented and increasingly destructive and longer fire seasons. Every year, pretty much, is a historic fire season now. But there is some hope. Federal and state wildland fire agencies have slowly but surely reassessed their philosophy and practice in the past 20 years or so, with increasing emphasis on prescribed fires, thinning operations, and when appropriate, let burn policies in wilderness areas. So, in overcoming a dualistic mindset in fire, we're slowly learning to listen to nature and work with it, not just against it. It used to be called the Fire Control Service, and they had to change that because I think it just became embarrassing. Now it's fire management, which I think is a little more appropriate. I like to think of it as fire negotiation or stewardship,
Okay, that was kind of, you're not exactly, it's not like a winning argument, but negotiation sounds like at least you're trying to fight the thing. All right.
or listen. I think that's the key, right? In a
Oh,
negotiation,
listen, that's an
yeah,
interesting
you
concept.
you have to acknowledge there's a force outside yourself that's more powerful, and you have to have the
That you're
humility and
not in control
disposition.
of it.
Exactly, exactly. So
Okay. Oh, I
really,
like that.
stewardship is probably the best term for it.
Ooh, oh no, wait. Say that again. Fired stewardship?
Yeah, stewardship.
That
Yeah.
sounds
Mhm.
great.
Right? Yeah, I think so. I
Yeah.
think so.
Okay. All right. I'm
Yeah.
gonna start talking about that in my blogs. I don't mean to name drop, but uh, if anybody wants to listen to, or rather read, Network Lobby's blogs on our policy prescriptions, I will start writing about exactly that. So thank you,
Fantastic.
Ben. That was
Yeah.
absolutely wonderful. That was really great. Thank you much. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. That was a lot. That's great. We'd love to hear from you. That was really great. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. Do I have time for a second insight or do we need to move on?
I think so. Yeah, you got a few minutes. Yeah, we're good.
Okay, great. Yeah, the second insight is something that's largely unknown to the public, very personal. to me and the wildland fire community, which is the mental health impact that these fire seasons are taking on wildland firefighters. So typical fire season means that we're away from home for about 6 or more months, working 2 to 3 week assignments, followed by 2 to 3 days off, then back on the fire line. Our days are 16 plus hours. We're sleeping in the dirt, eating MREs. Rinse, wash, repeat until we're a shell of a human being at the end of the fire season. And this is not normal, right? This is what's come about as all these from all these policies and climate change. Obviously, the work itself is dangerous, but yeah, we have an average of 13 wildland firefighters that die every year on the fire line. But the greater danger is that we're losing about 30 plus to suicide every year in the off season. So the reasons we suspect are PTSD from chronically elevated cortisol levels, really high rates of divorce and alcoholism, significantly higher than the general population. And for many firefighters who are seasonal employees, losing the camaraderie of your crew and the purpose of a mission during the off season. So yeah, for me, working intimately with the effects of climate change and having witnessed and experienced the toll of working as a wildland firefighter for over a decade has inspired me to take on the work of Laudato Si. I want to thank, I'm grateful to Pope Francis for inspiring us, encouraging us to listen to the cries of the earth and the poor. And I want to thank you for, yeah, living out your faith and spirituality in political action. Well, thank you.
We want to thank you, Ben, and also you, Shamyra. Both of you, you're living out your faith in a way that I personally don't think that I could do. And I can see that you are both doing it day in, day out. And it is something that it's a calling for you. And not only do we admire that, we appreciate that. And we at Network Lobby, we really support that type of work, in particular when it comes to lifting up the voices of the poor for the care of creation, in particular when we're talking about Laudato Si or Laudato Deum. This is what we need to do, in particular when we're talking about the environment. So thank you so much, Ben. This is this has been great. Uh, Ben, Shamyra, if you guys want to drop your emails in the chat for our participants so that they can maybe get in touch with you and ask you some questions later on, if you feel comfortable, that would be absolutely great. I think that a lot of our participants would be uh, very happy to discuss a lot of things with you. So thank you very much for joining us, Ben and Shamyra. Thank you.
Thank you, Drake. Would you like me to hand it off?
I guess so. Yeah,
Yeah.
hand it off.
Yeah, I'll hand it off to Sister Emily.
All righty,
Sister Emily,
great.
welcome.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you.
Hi, network community. As faithful action takers, you know that you are central to the work that we do at Network, and that our government relations team is able to have the conversations that they have every day with congressional staffers and members of Congress themselves because of our connections with you, their constituents. So today we're asking you to put that constituent power to action through sending 2 letters to your members of Congress. The first is to tell your representative to vote no on the Permit Act. And the second is to tell your senators to vote yes on the Fix Our Forests Act. Meg is putting those links in the chat for you, and they'll be also in the follow-up email. And I know that sometimes it feels frustrating to take action when it doesn't seem like our members of Congress listen to us, and that's definitely understandable. And I also know that when all is said and done, you want to know that you are doing everything you can to make the world a better place for the people you care about. So I want to share a couple of tips to make your action even more powerful. First, when you fill out the initial form on the website, you'll be taken to a pre-drafted letter. You could easily just hit send, and your representative or senator's office will record your preference. Or you can add a few lines about why this bill matters to you. Congressional offices have told the Congressional Management Foundation that a personalized letter has about a 20 percentage points higher impact than a form letter. Members of Congress particularly want to hear about any specific impacts to their state or district and about your reasons for supporting or opposing the bill. The second thing you can do to increase your impact is to pass along the action opportunity to at least 3 friends, family members, or neighbors who might be willing to take action, and tell them why it matters. If every one of us on this call gets just 2 friends to take action, we greatly amplify our impact and make sure that our members of Congress are listening to us. The personal invites that you share with friends and family make them far more likely to take action than any email we send out. So that's your main homework. Send letters to your representative and your senators and invite others to join you in the work because they know you and they trust you. But I have one more thing. Please consider supporting Network through a financial gift. Your gift makes tonight's webinar and all the policy work and collaboration that happens behind the scenes possible. A $50 gift or more grants you annual membership, and you'll receive a copy of Connection, our award-winning quarterly magazine. More importantly, you'll know that your contribution is making a difference in advancing Catholic social justice in federal policy, so that we together can build a world where all of us can live in safe and healthy environments. Now back to Meg for the question and answer.
Great. Thanks so much, Emily. And thank you again to Drake, Mia, Shamyra, and Ben. So it is time for our Q&A, and we have a couple of questions here.
All right, let's take them on, Meg. Let's see what would it be. What's your questions, people? Let's see what you got.
Yes. All right. We have Ben, I think this is probably for you, but I mean, I think anyone else can answer it as well. This is from I believe Father Tony Romo. He is the pastor of St. Joseph Church in Memphis, Tennessee. What can we do as a parish to contribute to the care of the environment?
Yeah, thanks for your question, Father Tony. I believe it starts with relationship and drawing on Catholic social teaching, subsidiarity, knowing our own, local space and place. One thing we do that's really powerful here is a litter pilgrimage, and it's something you may have heard of. We did one for the Pilgrims of Hope for Creation this year, in the season of creation. And I have a really simple format for it. Basically, you get some people together and you go on a pilgrimage, maybe to a special place in your community. And along the way, you pick up trash and think about the principles and reflect on the principles of Laudato Si. I have like different questions, reflection questions that you can use. That's one really simple way to think about our throwaway culture and provide a good service to the community. That's just one example. Yeah, I think again, drawing from subsidiarity, there's no one size fits all. We really have to listen to how we can meet the needs of our place.
Thanks, Ben. Shamyra, do you have any thoughts on how an entire church community can get together to work on creation care?
Yes, thank you, Meg. That is an excellent question. Thank you, Father Romo. In Louisiana, we see a lack of leadership from our local churches. The industries donate money or give money to them, and they have deemed us as political, and they want to have a separation of political and the church. But really, we know they're just choosing a side with the facilities. I know that in Memphis, they have their own environmental justice that they are fighting. And I think that you could help our fight and your fight by speaking about it in church, because this is a human rights issue. Pollution shouldn't be political. It's just about us having clean air and clean water. And you can also take the step to lead and even reach out to some of the clergy here in Louisiana to speak about how you feel about it and let them know that you cannot be a man or woman of God if you will not prioritize the health of those human beings in your congregation or in your community. And it's so needed. So you can be that leader by speaking about it, putting it in your bulletins, hosting meetings, allowing groups to use your facilities, because we have an issue with being able to use the facilities at the church. They try to silence us. And being that role model for places in churches in Louisiana who are choosing to side with the prophet and over the people here. So I hope that helps. Thank you for your question.
Thank you so much, Shamyra. And I think some people asked about how they can educate local clerics, and you certainly addressed that as well there, right? Definitely sharing our stories and just continuing, yeah, that culture of encounter. Drake, there is a question about the Lighthizer versus Trump case, in which the youth of the United States are challenging the administration's environmental rollbacks as an attack on their constitutional right to life, health, and safety. Is Network doing anything with this lawsuit?
So I want to make something abundantly. So that case, to my knowledge, it happened in May of this year. It was about 22 young individuals. I think the oldest of them was 25. I love nothing more than seeing the youth filing a suit against the government. And that was filed in the district court of Montana, if I'm not mistaken, the Butte Division, against against Donald Trump in his capacity as president, of course. And they challenged several executive orders. Those executive orders prioritize fossil fuels. They undermine clean energy development. The reason that they were able to challenge this, that they had any standing, was because Montana has something that only a few states in the United States have. It's called a Green Amendment. And that is sort of like a state constitutional amendment that allows for people to sue the government in case it goes like, hey, you're actively doing something against our health, against our well-being, against our future. You're killing us. You're doing X, Y, and Z. And that is what these plaintiffs argued. So it's still sort of up in the air to my knowledge, Meg, unless you have like more knowledge than I do. I
No,
haven't
I
been following
definitely
that
don't.
closely. Okay. All right. But it seems that the strategy is sort of like it's a broad executive action against the fossil fuel policies that Trump has enacted. And there's sort of like a manageable relief that a court can grant. And that means that, like, well, the framing is kind of powerful because the court does take that in consideration. Like, young people challenged this executive order to unleash fossil fuels. And the court acknowledged the harms, but said, our hands are tied under the separation of powers. And the court is now trying to wrestle with the narrative of like, is the government's hands actually tied in this way? Like, can they no longer do a thing legally because they've made a commitment to fossil fuels and they might be pressured to do something for renewable energy? We'll see what that outcome looks like. Around the world, that has taken different forms. In particular, in Europe, in South America, in Africa, and in Asia, there have been different regional and continental courts that have basically stated, yeah, you can't do that. You have to. Climate is a human right, and you cannot circumvent a human right. The United States government and our courts, however, are taking a slightly different approach. So we'll see what that looks like, but I am happy to follow that. And for anyone who wants to email me, I will drop my email in the chat and give you more information the more that I know it.
Great. Thank you so much, Drake. And I think what you just said, climate is a human right, is such a powerful and true statement. Just as we here at Network say that food and healthcare and our vote, housing, all of these things are human rights. I think tonight, Shamyra and Ben and Mia and Drake all illustrated just inspired by the gospel and Laudato Si and Pope Francis, that we are indeed talking about both, our planet and human rights and our right to flourish in this country and around the world. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thanks once again to all of our special guests. And you will receive this recording, the slides, and the action alerts in your email. So thank you and have a good night.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Shamyra. Thank you, Ben. This has been wonderful.